Our first guest tonight blasting Republican leaders for not giving the members time to read the omnibus spending legislation text. And he says the time is now to get funding for the border wall, which, by the way, won't happen in what we know is contained in this legislation. Congressman Matt Gaetz, who serves on a number of key committees, including Judiciary, Budget, and Armed Services. Congressman, good to have you with us. I've heard Mark Meadows complain. I've heard you complain, a number of other members. It is squarely on Speaker Ryan and Mitch McConnell, the way this is going down. They are leading the House and the Senate, as you well know, and they bring in Pelosi and Schumer, and the four of them make these decisions. What's the point of being in control of the House and the Senate?
Well, Lou, this is bipartisanship at its worst, and unfortunately, deficit spending is the glue holding together the Republican leadership and Democrats here in Congress. It is absurd that under Republican control of the government, we would see the biggest increase in spending since the Obama stimulus package. That's not what we promised people. We promised border security. We said that conservative principles like pro-life principles and pro-Second Amendment principles would be upheld if voters trusted us, and I fear that this massive amount of deficit spending will hollow out this country from the inside.
Congressman, you're a conservative. You are first and foremost on so many issues. And I last night talking with Congressman Ron DeSantis, who, like you, is a stalwart in the House. And I asked simply, why do you put up with Paul Ryan? Why does the president put up with Paul Ryan? He has sold out to everyone he can sell out to, the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, to the establishment in every way. He does his master's bidding, and he says the hell with the Republican Party every chance he gets. And conservatives be damned.
Well, I wish that Speaker Ryan would form a governing coalition with conservatives, and I wish that conservatives would be more willing on some issues to work with the Speaker on those matters. Unfortunately, this bill that we're about to vote on was built on a coalition that did not include conservatives. It includes Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. I'm sure that Chuck Schumer is popping the champagne in his office right now with a number of Democratic priorities maintained.
He'd be a damn fool if he weren't. We're looking at about $4 billion in spending headed his way. It's on an easy pass down the Northeast Corridor for the tunnel project, the Gateway project. We're looking at the president accepting a 5% down payment on the border wall, which is basically a very large statement to the president that I would think in normal circumstances he might find it a reason to fight, but not now.
Well, you're right. We promised the American people a wall, not a tunnel. Now, I'm not sure if the Gateway Tunnel is going to be in this bill or not, and frankly, it's going to take many hours, and for most people, it would take many days to read this bill. We chastise Democrats when they put legislation on the floor without the opportunity to review it. And, Lou, these are highly complex issues. There is language in this legislation that will impact people's Second Amendment rights. Now, how am I supposed to analyze that and determine its impact on people's constitutional rights if we only have a few hours to read it before a vote? That is no way to run. Anything, much less the most powerful government in the world.
$1.3 trillion, most of it, much of it, Democratic spending. I mean, they couldn't have written it up better from what we know of what its contents are. Secondly, this is a president who's being mocked by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, as well as Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. And there's no other way to put it. He's being mocked. 5% on the border wall, and he has to eat that? What is the point of being a Republican, and how many of you think that you will have a majority after this bill passes and you head into the midterms? I think that you're waiting for a slaughter.
If this is the last bill we pass of significance before going into the midterms, it will and it should leave a sour taste in the mouth of voters. I'm hopeful that after this we'll be able to tackle critical priorities of the president, like infrastructure, like another round of tax cuts, like entitlement reform.
It's not going to matter, Congressman.
But
it's not going to matter.
Look, I mean,
what
the
you're
people
putting forward here right now and signing your names to will be gun control legislation. You'll be funding the Democratic agenda. You'll be telling the president to go to hell with his. And this is just not acceptable to his base. And whoever is advising the president, whoever is advising the Republican conference in the House is crazy as hell. You're going to pay a huge, huge price.
Well, the people who would advocate for this bill, Lou, would say that the military is desperately in need of support,
absolutely,
in readiness training and equipment. My problem is that I'm not willing to fund the military in exchange for hollowing out the country that they're fighting to save here at home. If we allow this country to be destroyed by debt, to be driven into economic despair, it won't much matter what our military might is around the world. And so I think we need to take care of the priorities and the promises that we made to the American people. Reform entitlements, make people who can go to work actually go to work and not live off of the government. And unfortunately, we have not demonstrated the courage to do the things necessary to save the country. And I think that the voters will remember us for it, unfortunately. But we still have got time if we'll deliver on the president's promises, but we better get right to it.
This bill is a broken promise, and it's an agenda that doesn't belong to this president. It doesn't belong to the Republican Party. It belongs to K Street, the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, Paul Ryan, and Mitch McConnell. And unfortunately, they may be the only two Republicans left in either house at this rate. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Lou.